So, Double or Nothing is in the bag, and wow, what a show it was. We had some very interesting matches. We had the ladder match was right out of the gate, which I was not expecting, and then the Stadium Stampede match was possibly one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. I was keeled over laughing. So why don't we get into it? And first I'll introduce, we have with me Dustin West. How's it going, man?
It's going great. How are you? I'm really excited to talk about last night's brilliance that was Double or Nothing.
Good. And we also have Dave Colarusso today.
Hey, how y'all doing?
All right, so let's just get into it real quick at the pre-show. I don't know if you guys watched it. I think you guys did. I think we were online together. And we had Private Party versus Best Friends. This was a number one contenders match. It was pretty much a back and forth match. There wasn't anything huge that took place during it. One thing that I did notice, this match was a bit sloppy. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I saw it was a train wreck in a couple spots.
Yeah, I had that same exact note. Every match is going to have a couple communication errors, so it wasn't really out of the ordinary, but yeah, it felt a couple people were dancing around a little bit trying to figure out what was next.
And well, as far as like that, and then I still hate the silly string. I hate that move. All in all, the Best Friends won with strong 0. All right, so we'll move on to the main card. I did not expect them to put the ladder match on first.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either. In a way, actually, I'm really glad they did, considering the co-main events we had, so it really set the tone. But as soon as they announced that was a kickoff, I immediately was like, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah, Dave, what do you think about that?
No, I was a big fan. I like the everyone put it, not everyone, but there was a lot of promos leading up to it, and I felt like, especially since there's no audience, all those promos led up to just kind of like feeding and influencing the what was going to happen with that match.
Yeah, so there were some promos at the beginning. We had one from Kip Sabian, and then kind of the one that played most into any story in the ladder match was Best Friends with Orange Cassidy, and Orange Cassidy was not understanding how the match worked. He was a little confused there. All right, so the match starts off, and we get Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian are the first two out. So teammates start off this match, and the match works every 2 minutes. A new person enters the match, but it can end at any time. And they actually had a legit 2 minutes because they had a giant timer on the entire time that you could see. So it wasn't a fudged 2 minutes like a Royal Rumble where they're like, okay, you go out now, even though it's 90 seconds instead of 2 minutes or whatever. So we had Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky starting off. They both grab ladders right at the beginning, and then they get into the ring and look at each other and like, nah, we probably can't do this right now. So they throw the ladders out. They fight for a bit. Kip Sabian comes in. Jimmy Havoc comes in behind the two SCU participants and take them out with a ladder. So a heel not being an idiot, and his friend, I guess, teammate, best friend, as he called him in his promo, comes in and actually right off the bat gets involved instead of waiting around near the end of the match like an idiot. So taking advantage of the no DQ rules, Havoc sets up a ladder across the turnbuckle, so from one side of the turnbuckle to the other, and he basically ends up getting powerbombed onto it by Frankie. He kind of powerbombed himself onto it, really. And then he gets suplexed into it. Darby comes out. He takes out everyone, a flip over stunner on Frankie, and then he sets up a ladder between the ring and the barricade. And I was just saying, I hope this one breaks this time. And you could see it was already partially broken before it got out. It was definitely well scored before they got there because it was sagging a little bit in the middle. And he decides to set up a ladder and jump off the ladder with his skateboard, and he crashes through it as Frankie moves out of the way on the outside. Orange Cassidy is next to come in. He strolls over to commentary to get clarification about the match. Excalibur says, Tony told you this like 200 times, which I thought was hilarious. Orange Cassidy is too lazy to set up the ladder. He dodges attacks from Kip Sabian, Frankie, and Scorpio Sky. Colt Cabana comes out while Orange Cassidy is trying to set up a ladder and trying to figure out how to actually do it. The crowd is chanting, help him, Colt. And Colt ends up just tossing Orange Cassidy out, sets up the ladder, goes up on his own, but SCU tipped the ladder over. There's a low kick spot, the lazy low kicks from Orange Cassidy onto SCU, but and then he ducks clotheslines from them, hits a double drop kick on both of them, and then he runs both Scorpio Sky and Kazarian into the ring apron on the outside, and then SCU ends up taking Orange Cassidy out. Joey Janela is in because Phoenix was pulled from the match because he was too banged up from Wednesday's crash and burn. From what I heard is that he showed up and he was still a bit sore, so management's like, just take it off and go home. So he was actually sent home. He was gonna do it, but management's like, you're just banged up, we'll call Joey, he'll come in, you're fine, go home. So that is a typical Phoenix thing to do. Joey Janela hits a cannonball dive and takes out SCU and Orange Cassidy out on the outside. He runs wild, takes out everybody, uses a chair to stop Kazarian going up the ladder. Luchasaurus comes in, he boots Kip Sabian with the ladder, slaps Joey, headbutts Colt, spinning. I love the spinning knee kick from Luchasaurus to Sky. It's so good. He powerbombs Kip Sabian onto everybody on the outside. Next up, Darby kind of gets back into the match, and he headbutts Luchasaurus up on the top turnbuckle and actually hits a code red. And then the mystery entrant ends up being, as I predicted it, so point for me, Brian Cage. And he just destroys everybody except Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy rides on Brian Cage's back up the ladder. And I'm like, if this is the finish and Orange Cassidy gets the chip, this would be the greatest finish of all time in a ladder match. But unfortunately, he did not. All of the other participants team up on Brian Cage and take him out. They pile ladders, a barricade, and then they pick up one of the huge prop poker chips and puts it on top of him. So he's buried under a bunch of plunder. Kip Sabian kicks a ladder into Colt Cabana at one point. Sky pins him into the corner with a ladder, and then Sabian hits a coast to coast, sending the ladder into Colt, which was a very nice coast to coast, if I should say so. And then we have Orange Cassidy and Kip Sabian fight on the ladder, and Sabian gives Orange Cassidy the middle finger, and Orange Cassidy decides, I might take that finger and break it off. And Sabian falls backwards onto a ladder set up in the side. Penelope gets involved, and Orange Cassidy blocks a punch from the left and the right and is holding onto her wrists. And she's like, uh-oh. And then he just lets her go, and she falls backwards onto Kip Sabian, who had fallen onto a ladder. Jimmy Havoc takes out Orange Cassidy. At this point, best friends come out to help. Luchasaurus comes in and has a funny spot with Orange Cassidy and Marco Stunt with a tiny ladder. Orange Cassidy tries to give Luchasaurus a choke slam, and he can't lift him, and he's too tall. Joey Janela ends up taking Orange Cassidy and hitting a Death Valley driver from the apron onto the pile where Cage is underneath. And then we have Scorpio Sky taking out Janela with a TKO. Kazarian and Sky find themselves on top of the ladder, and they're fighting to get to the chip, and Luchasaurus pushes it over. Brian Cage comes to life, throws everything off of him, and he and Luchasaurus have this massive Haas striking exchange. Then Cage lifts up Luchasaurus and gives him a power bomb into a ladder set up in the corner. Darby Allin, barely crawls his way into the ring. He's just like dead. Cage just destroys him with a drill claw pile driver. That was crazy. I went, oh my god, when I saw it. And then Taz comes back out because he is managing Cage and he is telling him to continue beating down Darby. Cage throws a Darby and a ladder off the side to the floor. Cage climbs the ladder and grabs the poker chip. And he is the winner. So the mystery entrant is the winner of this match. There's a few spots in here I was a bit confused on. Was I the only one that did not understand why he bothered putting Darby Allin onto a tiny ladder to throw both of them over the side?
Dave, you hop on that one, buddy.
I do get it, and it's kind of like a, hey, I'm here to play, and this is what you're gonna get. But at the same time, it would have been much more effective if Darby had not have, slipped off.
Well, yeah, that was a little bit of a botch too. But yeah, I guess if the ladder and Darby stayed as one and landed on the ground, okay, that would. I don't know why Darby would even want to take that, but he's crazy. But it is what it is. Dave, what else do you think about this match?
I dug it, and I was happy that it was fast paced, and because other paced matches like hey, 90 seconds to the next guy or 2 minutes to the next guy comes in, if you have somebody who's not good, it's gonna really, really, really drag out. But this one really popped for me, and I was all about it. And I gotta give props out to Frankie Kazarian. That dude is like 43 something years old, and he and Scorpio had a spot where he did a super kip up. And I'm 35 myself, and I'm fit, whatever, etc. But at Frankie Kazarian doing a kip up at 43, that's goddamn impressive. But and I have another note here that there's something about the red ladders that just really popped out for me. Love it. Love the red ladders. Keep doing that.
Yeah, Dustin, what do you think of this?
The match I really loved. There was so much, and I definitely agree with Dave. The pacing felt. It just felt right. When you have 2 minutes, you have 2 minutes, and it didn't go that slow. Orange Cassidy spending his entire 2 minutes trying to ask how he was supposed to win the match and then trying to set the ladder up was great. There's just so many spots in this. Also, what I loved with the pacing, not just with the 2 minutes you have to come out, I loved when you watch a lot of ladder matches, there isn't that like, like you're so tired climbing the ladder. They were going. If there was a fresh body in the ring, every time they would climb for that ladder or climb up for the chip. If Orange Cassidy would have won by riding Brian Cage's back, I was also rooting for it. I would have popped. I thought it would have been great, but the rightful guy did win. There was a lot of things happening. With that being said, the only thing that it left me wanting was I wish I could have gotten just a little bit more of Brian Cage, but I got a lot of SCU, I got a lot of Orange Cassidy, I got a little bit of everybody in this, so it was a great way to start the show.
Yeah, and I have to say that the crowd that was at ringside and the little bit of crowd, I'm sure is just family and friends type of deal that were farther back in the seats, they were loud all night and really gave a ton of atmosphere to these matches. And I have to give a huge a huge shout to Big Swole, because she made the night as being a crowd participant, because she was interacting with the heels, yelling at them. They were mocking her back a few points. In the Brody Lee did the flexing his biceps to her, and during the Nyla Rose Sheeta match, she was having to be held back by the other ladies around her so she wouldn't get involved with the match. And then I think was it Brian Cage that she had a little yelling match with as well during this? I think it was during this match.
I think it was.
Yeah, I think we were saying in the chat, Big Swole versus Brian Cage. When is this going to happen?
Oh, speaking of Brian Cage, am I mistaken? But when he made his entrant, did he tear a ladder apart with his bare hands?
I did not.
Did anyone see that?
I did not.
It was It was definitely a prop ladder. He was walking out with Taz, and he just ripped it in half, and then walked into the ring. And I said, "Oh shit! Okay, let's go." But I didn't catch it at first. I caught it on a highlight when I tried to rewatch it this morning. But that happened, and that was great. So that was it.
All right, so that was the opening match. I'm like, ooh, that's going to be a tough one to follow. But MJF and Jungle Boy was the next match. I'm like, oh, whoa, this is going to be a tough spot. But they pulled it out. I thought their match was wonderful. They basically had a old school wrestling match with some new school moves in it, really. It started off with the sequence of one-upmanship. MJF does a classic heel. He fakes a knee injury and then blindsides Jungle Boy. MJF works over the arm. Jungle Boy hits 3 dives in a row. Then there's a nice swinging DDT from Jungle Boy. MJF gets a foot on the rope to break a count here. MJF keeps attacking the arm. Jungle Boy hits a Canadian Destroyer at one point. MJF is basically out on his feet, but manages to super kick Jungle Boy in like a desperation. Then he falls into a cover. Jungle Boy kicks out into a crossface, or was that a label lock, I think, actually. And but his arm gives out because his arm has been being attacked this whole time. Jungle Boy hits a poison Rana on the apron to MJF. MJF basically sells it like he is dead on the outside. Everybody's checking in on him, making sure it's okay, that MJF is all right. But Jungle Boy, he doesn't want to take the count out win. He actually picks up MJF, rolls him into the ring. He goes up top. MJF grabs Aubrey's pants, and as she pulls away, she bounces into the ropes, and Jungle Boy falls and crotches himself up on the top rope. They end up fighting on the top rope a little bit. Jungle Boy manages to get things back together. It hits a sit-out powerbomb off the top rope for a 2. MJF tries a pile driver, but his back gives out because he was just powerbombed off the top rope. That's great psychology right there that you usually don't see. And Jungle Boy fights an armbar attempt. They exchange a bunch of roll-up holds. MJF grabs the tights. Then Jungle Boy gives it back by grabbing the tights as well. They go into another roll-up pin. MJF snags the pin, and he wins the match. I thought this was great. Dave, what was your take on this match?
I was an absolute enormous fan of this match. It was very clean. It was very technical. And you would expect something dirty and mean from MJF, but at the same time, he didn't do any of that. He showed his wrestling prowess, and I was a huge fan of just how clean and technical it was from both, not just from MJF, but from Jungle Boy as well. And the as small as it was, that crowd was booing the entire time, like yelling, screaming, booing, because MJF is just such a despicable bastard that everyone could not help but boo the entire time. But at the same time, it was so good, and there was no BS, there was no outside interference. It was 2 dudes going at it and wrestling.
Yeah, Dustin, your take.
All right, I love this match for multiple reasons. One, there was a lot of speculation, especially for me, that it was going to be used to set up a Wardlow versus Luchasaurus match. It didn't. What it did was it stood on its own as a match between MJF and Jungle Boy, and it was great. They had really great exchanges early. The fact that just like Dave said, it was just a good technical wrestling match. It was also the youth in this match. Jungle Boy, he was average, was what, 22, 23?
Yeah, he's 22, and MJF is 24. He just barely turned 24.
Okay, so they just were big. Jungle Boy is just now finally allowed to drink in bars, for God's sakes, and he's 22 years old. He's insanely talented, like that was ever in any question. But we have 2 guys that are in their early to mid-20s going at it, and they put on this caliber match at a pay-per-view, meaning that the future is very bright for AEW. I mean, this match, I wasn't really expecting it. Like I said, in my mind, I thought, okay, are we going to have Wardlow come out? Like, what's going to happen? But it stood on its own, and it was placed, I thought, perfectly in the card right after. Following that ladder match, it would be difficult. So the fact that we got a really good wrestling match just really helped strengthen this pay-per-view. So I give this match 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I have a feeling this duo is going to be an ongoing thing for the next 10 years in AEW.
And it'd be great. It'd be really great. These guys are really talented, and they had great chemistry, I thought.
Yeah, and another thing in this match, Wardlow didn't even come into play at all. He didn't get involved one bit, which is amazing for an MJF match.
And that's what I loved about it so much. When it comes down to it, it's pay-per-view, it's a fight, and MJF went out. He didn't need his enforcer. He made it work. And also with the finish, I know the finish, it wasn't a steal, but I guess because it was a couple 1 count, 2 count, this, that, switch back and forth, it still felt like MJF stole it, but it was a clean finish, and that's what I liked about it.
MJF did get an eye poke in there, like 2 roll-ups beforehand, so and then that last pin, there's a really interesting way to pin. He had one of Jungle Boy's arms as well, so he kind of had him kind of tied up in MJF's legs, and he couldn't break free. So it was a really I don't know, innovative pin, I guess. And then of course MJF did get that little eye poke in there right before the finish, so he had to do that. Next up we have Cody versus Lance Archer for the TNT title match. I was surprised they put this on so early. Mike Tyson comes out with the belt. It is not the prettiest belt in the world, but they clarified on commentary that, because of everything going on, we couldn't get a proper belt made, so there will be replacement plates for it. So basically they will have a gold belt eventually once it can be properly made. But, it is what it is, so we'll have to see what the final design looks like, but the current design is a little nah. One thing I noticed when Arn was talking to Cody and holding the play card in front of his face, the card said Cody versus Wardlow. Wardlow was written in with like a dry erase marker. So has he not changed the play card since that match? So that was kind of funny. So obviously we have Jake the Snake at ringside. We have Arn Anderson at ringside. And then Mike Tyson is basically sitting next to Dasha in the timekeepers area. And Lance Archer, right out of the gate, hits a blackout, and Cody quickly rolls to the floor so he can't get pinned. He manages to slowly regroup over time, but basically Archer just tears into Cody throughout the majority of this match. They fight on the outside a little bit. Archer, so there's this regular permanent installed stairs at the location that they're in Daly's place, and Cody like jumped up onto the steel railing to do a dive or something, but basically Archer grabbed him and threw him over the barricades back into the ringside area from there. And back in the ring, Archer just works over Cody. He pulls the turnbuckle pad off, but that actually backfires, and Lance Archer runs into it when he misses a splash. Cody takes advantage and starts working on Archer's ribs, giving him like rabbit punches right to the side. And there's a point Archer overhead presses Cody and throws him over the turnbuckle, over the post, to the floor, and it was right over one of the post-mounted cameras that they had, so you had a nice view of the psychopath of Lance Archer there. Archer gave Cody a rock bottom for a 2 count, and I typed that into our chat right when I saw it, and then the next thing JR said was that a rock bottom? And they fight on the outside. Archer drops Cody with a forearm. Cody manages to get a crossface and ends up using Archer's own hair, which of course is not allowed. So the ref starts counting and has to break up the submission. Jake is pissed at Cody for pulling that, and he distracts Cody, but it doesn't work out. Cody ends up hitting a DDT right in front of Jake, and that is Jake's signature move. And then Archer hits back with a spine buster in front of Arn Anderson, which that is his signature move. Archer goes up to the top rope, and Cody rolls out to the apron, gives a kick to the back of the head, and then does a springboard cutter off the top rope. Is it just me, or should Cody stop doing springboard moves? They don't look that great. I guess go for either one of you on those ones.
Yeah, I don't think he needs to add that into his arsenal.
I mean, the disaster kick looks a little sloppy. The Cody cutter always looks not fluid at all. And then this, again, just wasn't the greatest. But I guess it is what it is. Cody hits a flip-flop and fly, so his dad's signature move, hits the final reckoning, his brother's signature move, and then hits a crossroads for a 2 count. He actually hits a stinger splash, as they specifically called out on commentary. Not sure why, or it could just be a red herring right there. Lance gives Cody a chokeslam, and he goes to do the everybody dies claw, but the pain is getting to Archer, and he cannot follow through with it. And then we come into the finish here. Jake distracts the ref. I am not sure why. What the point of it was. Archer does a rope walk from one turnbuckle to the other. Arn Anderson sees that the ref isn't paying attention and knocks Archer. He sweeps his legs out from under him, and Archer lands on the top rope. Cody gives Archer a reverse suplex. Another ref comes out and tattles on Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson is kicked out, and Jake the Snake, I don't know if he was kicked out as well, but he did go to the back. He grabs a bag with a snake in it. This is where Mike Tyson finally comes into play. He gets up on the stage, takes his shirt off, sends Jake packing. There was no blows or anything. And Cody hits 2 crossroads in a row and gets the pin. Both of us, me and Dustin, were really bad at the prediction out of this one. Go for it, Dustin.
All right, well, yeah, I, of course, picked Lance Archer. Okay, so this match, I also wanted to point out the officiating up to this point is great. Bryce Remsburg, I believe, is that the official's name that did this match?
Yes.
He might be my favorite official in AEW. He's just so animated, and Aubrey Edwards does the same thing. And I think one of the things that don't really get acknowledged a lot anymore is good officiating. It added an extra layer to this match, which it definitely felt personal. It felt like a fight. It showed dominance from both parts. It showed Lance Archer being the beast that he is. It showed Cody being the tactician he is. It just felt good. With that being said, I don't really understand why Jake tried to get the ref attention, and then Arn Anderson did a heel move, and I get why Cody was doing some heel stuff. I mean, the guy practically murdered his brother. They did some things to Brady, so it definitely, you're not going to see a babyface clean cutter go out there. Like, he's ready to kick some ass. But when they ejected Arn, but they did eject Jake. So that part of the match, I was kind of like, well, Jake didn't really do anything. He just distracted the official. But I guess something happened, whatever. But Mike Tyson, which I don't know about either of you, but if Mike Tyson were to take his shirt off and stare him in the eyes, I would shit my pants. That dude looks great. Like, he still looks buff. They got some shots of him ringside, some of which he was into the match. They did get one shot where he was yawning, which it made me yawn, not because the match was boring. It's just, it's habit. Cody wins the TNT Championship. I'm also really glad that they addressed that this isn't the real look. This is just a temporary championship, which is really assuring because that belt did not look great, and I don't think any person in the back went, yeah, this is the one. No, that belt looked like a template, but I'm actually really hoping that they keep the red belt, the red strap on it. I thought it looked great. This match was good. It surprised me with the finish. I mean, either one winning the TNT Championship, you could go either way. I think both of these men could have carried that mid-card championship very well. But Cody wins, and I was happy with this match.
Hey, what were your feelings on this one?
Honestly, I gotta disagree with Dustin. Great matchup all the way through until that ending. I mean, don't get me wrong. Mike Tyson with his shirt off, he will kill you. If he punches you in the right way, you will die. But I couldn't take that ending. I have no doubt that Cody can carry that championship and that he can. It will last throughout TV and etc. But to bring in Lance Archer, build him up in the way you did, just to have him lose that fast, I can't. I can't get on board with that.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed, especially the ending. Like, I was okay up until the ending. But, I mean, it wasn't a spectacular match or anything. It was basically Cody just getting his ass handed to him for quite a while until kind of the end there. But, yeah, I think the ending felt a little flat. Like, I really have no idea why Jake pulled the ref, and then everything. And then there was some timing issues too. Arn took forever to knock Lance off the top, and I think even Jake was late on distracting the ref as well. I don't know. I'm okay with Cody. Yeah, of course I'm okay with Cody taking the win, but again, yeah, Lance Archer I think would have made more sense, and it wasn't exactly a clean win, so how does this work out? Are we going to see a rematch of Cody and Lance because of the dirty finish at the end? I guess that's something to be determined. Next up, we have a quick update on Britt Baker. Basically, it is she fractured her tibia right at the knee. Looks like a bunch of hairline fractures right at the joint, and then she had partial tears of the ACL and PT tendon, or I guess PT because that would be redundant to say tendon. And then we'll hear more on the timetable of return on Wednesday, but sounds a little better than it was. While she does have a fracture in the tibia and 2 partial tears of a ligament and a tendon, a lot better than a full tear of the ACL, so that's good news. So that's probably closer to like a 4 or 5 month return versus 9 months to a year type of return if she has to have surgery and whatnot. So we'll hear more on Dynamite. Next up, we have Penelope Ford filling in for Britt Baker versus Kris Statlander. I thought this was an alright match. Nothing huge stood out. It was pretty much a bit of a back and forth here. They start out with some chain wrestling. Penelope bites Statlander's finger when Statlander tries to boop her, and Penelope is sent out to the outside at one point, and Kip Sabian yells at Statlander, "You leave her alone, you alien freak!" And Statlander did a dive onto Ford and Sabian on the outside, and she went far, and she smashed her face into the side of the barricade. But it looks like she was okay from that. Penelope hits a kick and goes for a pin, and Vicky Guerrero is showed at ringside yelling at the ref that it should have been a 3 count in her classic squeal, and the commentary even mentioned, "Man, the dogs are barking in Jacksonville." And then I think one of them said, "and the next couple towns over" as well. Statlander hits a splash in the corner and a running knee. Statlander hits a really nice Falcon Arrow for a 2 count. Penelope reverses out of a big bang into a reverse DDT, and then Statlander blocks a stunner from Ford and hits her with a huge clothesline, puts Ford up onto the top rope. Ford fights out of it and hits a Rana, which Statlander, luckily she's as strong as she is, because she only got one of her legs on top of her arm, and the other one she kind of had to overhook because it slipped over her shoulder. But again, Kris Statlander is super strong, so she powered through that. Statlander hits a powerbomb and then a Big Bang Theory for the win. So I thought it was a fine match. Nothing huge stood out. I didn't see any massive botches or anything, so give this one at least a thumbs up. Dave, what do you think?
I was really into this match. It reminded me of MJF versus Jungle Boy. And it not so much that it told a story. I mean, it did tell a story, but it showcased each of their talents, which I'm totally cool with, because it shows off that the fact that both of them are in the top 5 and they can go. And if you really wanted to, they can go for 20, 30 minutes. And I have an additional note here, and I don't know why this came into my mind last night when I was thinking about this, but I was like, quote, preferable heel turn for Kris Statlander. And I don't know why I wrote that off the top of my head, but I'm still trying to fathom what a heel turn for Kris Statlander would look like.
Yeah, that would definitely be a strange one. Yeah, I know you mentioned that in the chat last night too, and I'm thinking about it, but it's like with Kris Statlander, they need to develop her character at some point. Which way it goes, I don't care really if it's a heel or face, but they need to flush her out at some point, because she's number 2 on the rankings now, or maybe even number 1, given the outcome of the following match. So they need to do something to hype her up, I think.
Oh no, I completely agree. Like, she's been around for about 6 months or so, and she's been super hyped up. At one point, she was the number 1 contender and fought on a pay-per-view with the champion. But what? And I don't want to sound crude or anything, but like, what the hell is she doing here? Like,
right?
I get it. You know, she's an alien. She's from Andromeda, et cetera, but what's the point?
Right, and I think we talked about this, me and Dustin, on Wednesday or on Thursday's show. That okay, it's fine, but you guys need to ground it in reality at some point. Is she an alien, or is she just crazy and thinks she's an alien, or is she doing it just to get into the head of her opponents? Any of those directions are fine. I'd rather them go that she's either crazy or she's doing it on purpose to mess with her opponents. That would probably be the best route, but they need to ground it at some point, just like grounding Matt Hardy's character at some point, that, you know, the guy has split personality or something, or he's doing it on purpose to mess with people, not that he's really a possessed soul or something like that. Dustin, what do you think about this match?
I thought it was fun. It gets a thumbs up, especially for this is a match we weren't supposed to have. We were supposed to have Britt Baker versus Statlander, which it didn't really have a big build-up, but it had enough considering we had a fatal 4-way, and then Britt completely disregarded the entire match just to keep the lockjaw locked in on Statlander. For a fill-in match, also, I mean, we asked last week, we were asked about a breakthrough. I'm very high on Penelope Ford. I've watched her in Independent, especially because, you know, she's from Philadelphia. I think she has great ring awareness. I think she has really great upside. Statlander in this match, I think it might be one of her better matches. I loved also, and actually I could definitely sort of see a heel turn, and one of the reasons why I think that was just because she came out a lot more aggressive. She came out, yeah, she did the booping to the crowd, but when she was going, I thought she really came with this really anger, like this fire, and it definitely showed. She is very strong. I think she adjusted a little bit better with Penelope Ford's height than I've seen her recently. I think they had really great chemistry. I mean, for a match that we weren't supposed to have, and for Penelope Ford, and I like how they showcase it. You have an opportunity to move into this part of the women's rankings. So the match kind of served that purpose. It showed the depth of the female roster. I thought it was good. I mean, it was a pay-per-view match on a pay-per-view. It was fine. It was a thumb up. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was a good match.
Yeah, and I think given Statlander's height, she's probably taller than most of the women she wrestles anyway, so she probably is definitely used to working with people who are always going to be shorter than her, most of the time at least. All right, so next up we had Dustin versus Shawn Spears, or at least we were supposed to have Dustin versus Shawn Spears. According to Spears, when he comes out in a suit. He's not even dressed for the match. Grabs the mic and says, "I told you that mediocre careers come to an end, but where's Dustin Rhodes? He's at home washing his tights." And then Dustin's music hits, and Shawn Spears turns his back to the camera and is just looking at the stage. And it just keeps playing and playing, and then he turns back around with this huge grin, just like he had on his little news show that they did on Dynamite. And basically lets us know that, he's playing a joke on everybody and that Dustin is not really there. Shawn tells Aubrey to ring the bell and start the count out because it is a booked match and it's going to end up being a forfeited win here. But then Dustin's music hits again, and Spears is like, no, I told these idiots only to play it once. And Brandy Rhodes makes her way out, and Shawn Spears is looking at her, and behind him, Dustin Rhodes appears in the ring, and they fight. Basically, it ends up that Shawn eventually is just in his underwear and socks, and we see that he has Tully Blanchard's face on the crotch of his underwear. There's a spot where Dustin kind of pulls his underwear down and is spanking him, and all in all, Dustin hits the final reckoning, and the match is over. This match did not go anywhere near where I thought it was going to be. It was just a pure joke match, and I don't even know why they bothered doing it. Dustin, why don't you take this one?
Okay, I'll go. Okay. I'm gonna knock this out. Did anyone else besides me think at first glance that one, I didn't realize it was Tully Blanchard, but I don't know whether it's because I had a little bit to drink last night when I was watching this, but the first question was like, is Shawn Spears' dick hanging out? And then of course, it was Tully Blanchard. But so this match, it reminded me a little bit of, you remember I think it was like last year, it was John Cena versus Undertaker. John Cena wasn't going to get a match. Undertaker showed up, and it was a squash, essentially. And that match it kind of reminded me a little bit of this, and I'll explain. Dustin, he got his ass whipped by Lance Archer. Disappeared. Spears called him out. Spears thinking it's going to be an easy win, which I dug it. I like the heel part of it, but then the fact that Dustin actually did come out thinking, oh, okay, cool, we're going to get a match. He embarrassed Shawn Spears. He looked great, by the way, regardless of where you thought the match is. That Dustin looked really great. I didn't dislike it. Where it was on the card, questionable. It may be early. That kind of seemed a little bit more pre-show-ish. I don't get where they were trying to run. I understand the build-up they were trying to do because we talked about it on Thursday, but this felt like it maybe would have just been better off on Dynamite than a showcase pay-per-view. So I'm kind of on both sides about it, but I mean, in my brain, the best way I could sum it up is, it was there. Like it just happened. So that's all I can really say about it.
Yeah, it's kind of a come down match, and I don't think it was necessary to have it, at least on the pay-per-view, I guess. But yeah, maybe been Dynamite. Dave, how about you?
I get it. I love Shawn Spears. I love Dustin Rhodes. I'm a huge fan of Shawn Spears, to be honest, especially his theme song. And I'm kind of at a loss for words. Like, just even seeing it in the build-up too, you're like, oh yeah, Dustin Rhodes is probably going to win this just so he can stay employed. But yeah, I was not a fan, and it was they're both super strong wrestlers. They could have gone for 20 minutes. I mean, not that they needed to, but they could have gone for 20 minutes. They chose not to, and it was a comedy match, and which I'm cool with. Like, you can have a comedy match, etc., but like, these two dudes could have put on an awesome showcase. They chose not to, and that gets a downvote in my vote.
Yeah, I just don't think this match was necessary, especially given how long the show actually went. I mean, I could have easily cut this match out. All right, next up we had Hikaru Shida versus Nyla Rose for the AEW Women's Championship in a no DQ, no count out match. Shida does the smart thing right out of the gate and attacks before the bell because Why not? They brawl a little bit. They fight over a kendo stick. Nyla hits Shida a bunch of times with the kendo stick. I don't know if any of you have seen Shida's social media this morning, but she has welts all over. Nyla throws Shida into the barricade on the outside, sends Shida through a poker table that was set up near the timekeeper's area. Nyla then hits Shida with a chair, chokes her with basically between the chair seat and the edge of another chair, and Big Swole has to be held back here from attacking Nyla with all the other ladies. Back in the ring, Nyla hits a sidewalk slam and then a splash for a 2 count. Shida turns a beast bomb attempt into a Rana and then hits a running knee. Nyla gives Shida a suplex and sends Shida to the outside. Nyla tries to throw Shida into the ring post, but she runs past it and up onto the stairs, and then she does a turnaround cross body, and then hits a running knee to the back of Nyla's head. And then Shida gives Nyla a hip toss onto a stack of giant prop poker chips. And Shida is really fired up at this point. Hits another huge running knee against a poker chip that was propped up. And Shida sends Nyla back towards ringside, grabs the kendo stick, hits her a few times, and then Shida gives Nyla a brainbuster on the kendo stick for a 2 count. I have to say, Shida is so strong given her size. And then a running knee for a 2 count. Shida gives Nyla a bunch of forearms, hits the ropes, and Nyla gives her a desperation power slam here. Shida is draped over the top rope. Nyla hits her knee drop off the top rope, which that's a spot I really don't like because the person who's draped over the top rope just is there so long, and all they have to do, if they're actually limp, they would fall off the rope. So it's a move that kind of bugs me every time I see it. Nyla throws a table into the ring and sets it up in the corner. Shida is powerbombed through the table, and then Nyla hits a Death Valley driver, grabs the kendo stick, starts hitting Shida with it, and then Nyla goes up to the top rope. Shida throws the kendo stick at Nyla. Not sure totally what that's supposed to do, but Nyla played it off as it kind of like stung her hands when it hit her. Shida gives Nyla a punch up on the top rope. Then Shida gives Nyla a avalanche falcon arrow. And that was a little scary because if she would have landed on Shida's leg, we don't need another one of those. She ends up hitting a running knee strike for a 2 count here. And then she just brains Nyla with a kendo stick and then pulls Nyla into a sitting position, gives her a running knee, and she gets the 3 count. Hikaru Shida is the new AEW Women's Champion. Dustin and I are like 2 for 5 on the night on picking these things. Dave, what did you think of this match?
I did not expect Hikaru Shida to win, but I'm totally about it. I'm 100% in favor of Hikaru Shida. She is my favorite in the women's division. 100% respect towards her. And this is my own little personal bias, but so she's from Japan. Actually, just moved here back to the United States from living in 2 years in Japan. I studied Okinawan Karate Do, a bunch of ground combat sports and stuff like that. So everything she does, I'm like, oh, I recognize every single one of those strikes and acts, and 100% on board. Respect everything she's doing because it makes sense in this fantasy wrestling world that she's doing, but like it makes sense to me. Like I recognize that. That makes sense. I would do that too, as somebody who does all the combat arts and Okinawan Karate Do, BJJ, etc., etc. 100% on board. Super happy that Hikaru Shida is the AEW Women's Champion.
Dustin, how about you?
I am pissed off because I cannot pick a winner to save my life at Double or Nothing. No, man, like I had Nyla Rose winning, and my reason is because I look at it from a whole different perspective on being in the business and stuff like that. I really thought Nyla Rose winning would have, and I'm going to admit I'm a little bit wrong on this too. But Nyla Rose winning, I definitely thought would have just built up the AEW Women's just that little much. But also with Hikaru Shida, who isn't a joke in the ring at all, she won, and I personally would have preferred to see Nyla Rose win. But how that match was, those two different styles conflicting each other. Nyla Rose's power, Shida's quickness, the combat sports background, the toughness of both of them, and they weren't afraid to really go. They went around, they experimented a little bit, like they didn't stay in one spot, they kept moving. It flowed really nice. How that match finished, I'm completely okay with. This match, for being a no DQ and for being for the AEW Women's Championship, I thought certainly set the bar for the next defense of the AEW Women's Championship. I thought the match was great. The crowd would have, the crowd there was really good, but if we were talking Full House, where we were supposed to be for Double or Nothing, the crowd would have lost their minds to see Shida win. With that being said, it wasn't a loud crowd. The loudest was me screaming on my couch because I got pissed that I had to put another tally in the loss column. But this match was really good. And leading up to this, considering that this took after the Shawn Spears Dustin, and then it led into the next match, which is, of course, we'll talk about the co-main event. I thought the placement of it was great. I really did enjoy this women's match.
Yeah, they've been doing really good at the placement of the women's title match on the pay-per-views. They put it high up in the card. I think they've put it just before the men's match a couple of times at least. So good on them, because usually you would run the show from the least important matches to the most important matches, and obviously the women's title match is going to be up near the top, so you should put it at the top. And yeah, I thought this definitely raised the bar in the AEW women's division. Hopefully that bar stays nice and high going forward. And of course, Hikaru Shida, she is all in with AEW. She's on a 3-year deal. She moved to the United States, so she now lives here and is definitely going to be a fixture in AEW for some time to come. And I like that they did have a little bit of a video package ahead of time, and they did have a little bit of a sit down with her talking some, and I really hope they do that more. Her English isn't the greatest, but she's okay with it, and of course, if they want, she can just talk in Japanese and they can subtitle it, because they even subtitled some of her English anyways. So I think that would be a good thing to do, is let her cut promos in Japanese and subtitle them. You don't have to do. She doesn't have to do live promos if you don't want to, and that'd be perfectly fine. That's something I think they really dropped the ball with Riho with. They did like one kind of sit down promo where she spoke in Japanese. They subtitled it, and that was kind of it. Just really early in her run, and they never went back to it, and that's kind of a bummer. So I hope they do better by Hikaru Shida than they did with Riho. But like I said, she is now in the US and she's signed a 3-year deal with AEW, so we should see her for a good long time here. Next up, we have the co-main event of the evening. I was a little surprised until I saw the final match that this match did not go on last, because it is the world title match, and theoretically you're supposed to put it on last. I guess they could have called the Stadium Stampede match a lights out match or something like that, and then they could have gotten away with it. But anyways, we had Jon Moxley versus Brody Lee for the AEW world title. Nice little touch here. There's security in the ring, kind of diagonal across the ring while the introductions are happening. Once again, Brody Lee makes sure that Dasha calls him the AEW champion. Of course, she calls him the self-proclaimed AEW champion. And right off the bat, Moxley tries for a running knee strike, but Brody catches him right away with some strikes. Brodie misses a big boot and goes over the top rope, and Moxley hits a dive and sends Brodie through the barricade. And Moxley goes for a suplex on the floor, but Moxley is the one that ends up eating a suplex. And then we have here Big Swole jaw-jacking at Brody Lee, and Brody Lee gives her the flexing his biceps in front of her, which was really funny. Brody hits a few suplexes in the ring and sets up Moxley on the top rope. Moxley fights out, but gets caught by Brody anyways and sent to the outside. Brody hits a dive of his own, mirroring Moxley's previous dive. And then Brody sets up the barricade against that permanent installed staircase and railing that I spoke of in the Cody match. And they fight on the outside for a bit. Brody flips the librarian's table that they had their tea set up on. The librarians were sitting at ringside all night, either with a book. Leva Bates was on her laptop. It looks like they were at a table in a Starbucks. That's kind of what they had set up right there and had their drinks on it. And Leva freaks out when Brody flipped their table. Brody gives Moxley a fisherman's suplex onto that barricade that was set up. Moxley started selling his elbow for a second, but it ended up not coming into play later. I think he might just actually had a little bit of a stinger or kind of hit his funny bone or something on the edge. They go back into the ring, have a huge striking exchange, and Brody hits a splash in the corner. Moxley hits a massive clothesline and hits a Gotch pile driver, gets a 2 count here. On the outside, Moxley pulls the ring steps over towards the timekeeper's table. They both hit each other with flying kicks. I think there was a miscommunication on who was supposed to kick who right there, but it worked out. Brody Lee brings up Moxley to the ring stairs, goes to powerbomb him through the timekeeper's table, but Moxley turns it into a backdrop, and Brody ends up going through the timekeeper's table. He gives this stare off into space like he's completely losing it. Brody gives Moxley a superplex back in the ring, and then Brody is sent back onto the outside. Moxley hits a half Nelson suplex into they have these prop card hands set up on either side of the ring near the stage, and then Brody Lee then gives he gave out a. What do you do? It gave him body slam onto the cards that were laid down. Moxley is slow to get back into the ring, but Brody hits another massive big boot and then a sit-out powerbomb for a 2 count. Moxley is crawling. He crawls out onto the stage, and he grabs this oversized poker chip that's just a prop and throws it at Brody. And then Moxley gives Brody a paradigm shift on the ramp. They break through the ramp, and all the staff and refs are looking down, seeing if people are all right. Moxley is the first to his feet. He crawls into the ring, and then Brody Lee comes up. He's all bloodied up from going through, and then Brody makes his way into the ring. Moxley ducks a lariat, hits a paradigm shift. Brody Lee kicks out at 1. And then Moxley hits him with a bunch of elbows, hits another paradigm shift. Brody kicks out at 2 this time. So Moxley's like, screw it, puts on a rear naked choke and chokes out Brody Lee. He does not submit. He just goes out, and the ref stops the match. Moxley retains the AEW championship. After the match, Moxley grabs his belt, gives Brody Lee the middle finger, and yells into the camera, "You want to steal my property? Let that be a lesson. Don't cross me. Keep your distance from the AEW champion if you know what's good for you." I thought this match was what it needed to be, and it ended up being a very good match, and Brody Lee did not tap out. He did not get pinned. He got caught in a choke, and he was choked out, and the ref had to stop it. So what do you think about this one, Dustin?
This match was very physical. It definitely met all my expectations leading up to the hype. It became physical almost immediately. Like, this felt like a fight, not a wrestling match, but a fight. Also, not sure if anyone saw this because it kind of grossed me out when Jon Moxley bit the bloody forehead of Brody Lee. Gross.
I missed that.
For one. Yeah, that was very gross. I was watching that, and I just look up, and I watched him bite. If you go back, you can find it. That was fucking disgusting. So the blood that you see in Mox's mouth was not his own. This match, it made them, but one, it gave John, biting, someone's bloody forehead, the paradigm shift through the ramp, it gave Jon Moxley this already existing toughness that you already knew he had. And then leading up to this, because I even commented on it, one, I definitely thought that, okay, so is someone going to cost Brody Lee the championship? What's going to happen? None of that happened, and I'm really, really, really happy it didn't, because Brody Lee refused to tap. He just went in there. It was a fight between two behemoths in AEW. This was exactly what you want a world championship match to have, and it lived up to every bit that I wanted in it. This match was probably one of my favorite ones on the show.
Dave, what do you think?
Okay, I have a couple questions off the bat. Is number one, Eric, how upset are you that the librarian's tea was spilled?
A bit.
And number two is that I completely agree with Dustin. Like, I'm watching Jon Moxley bite an open wound of another guy. I was like, is that just disgusting, or is that absolute intensity to a character? And it was unbelievable. Like, and for the match itself, unbelievable match. But the only question I have from here out is, aside from Brody Lee's unbelievable powerbomb, which is sick, and is where do they go from there? And the other thing, and it's kind of an ongoing question for AEW, is they're kind of lackadaisical in their disqualification rules. Like, Jon Moxley hit Brody Lee in the face with a poker chip in what was supposed to be a clean match. How is he not DQ'd for that? And this is kind of an ongoing thing.
Definitely. Yeah, this is definitely a thing that's been an issue, and they have been a little laxed on rules. I mean, they tend to make the argument that if you hit somebody with an object, it's a DQ, but if you hit an object with the person, it's not. So, sending somebody through a table is not a DQ because the table was just there and you threw the person. Nope, they went through it. But yeah, it's been a little lackadaisical. I mean, they could go along the lines of the poker chip was just a cardboard poker chip. It wasn't a big deal or something like that. I don't know.
Well, some of the things that I try to do with, because I ask myself the same exact thing. You also can't have, and I mean, you could if you wanted. The women's match was a no DQ match. So this one, you kind of want to also have a little bit of toughness to it. But I try to look at it like this. Imagine you're watching football, and you're watching, I don't know, let's say the New England Patriots play the Pittsburgh Steelers, or the Redskins play the Cowboys, whoever a high-profile rivalry is. When you watch that game, you don't want the officials to throw a flag every pass interference, every back. No, you're going to stop. You're breaking some of the rules. You want to see the hard hit. You want to see these teams kind of go at it. So when you're watching that, the ref would think, you know what? This is a world heavyweight championship match. I'm just kind of back off a little bit. Just not call everything I see. These are two big dudes. Tensions have been building. Let's let them go, because I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be the one to stare Brody Lee in the eyes or Jon Moxley and say, hey, could you maybe not do that? You're not going to do it. You're going to let them go. And that's kind of how I try to look at it. Sometimes when they don't do the rule calling, you're kind of like, okay. But for this match, because I thought that too, I just kind of just put yourself in that, just kind of take a step back and just watch it.
Yeah, and in this case, I guess with specifically the poker chip, would Brody Lee actually want the match to be stopped on a DQ for that, and him not get the championship? So they're kind of going the New Japan philosophy of reffing here. Dave, did you have something to say on that one?
Yes, I do. Just for the record, really quick, Dustin West, you can shut your ass.
Am I on a hot seat? What happened here?
All right, so on to the final event of the evening, and they actually filmed this the night prior. I heard they spent 8 hours filming this match. It was crazy. We have the Stadium Stampede match. So we have the Inner Circle versus the Elite. So we have Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, Jake Hager, Santana and Ortiz versus the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Matt Hardy, and hopefully Adam Page. The Inner Circle come out all in football gear, and they come out just like a football team entrance with some pyro and smoke. And I thought it was hilarious. They all had numbered jerseys on them that all meant something. I believe Sammy was like 92 because that was the year he was born, and then or something like that. Right? Was that right? And then Jericho was wearing 27, which was his dad's NHL number, and a few other ones I don't particularly remember. The Elite come out in their normal gear. First the Bucks, then Kenny, and then Matt Hardy comes out, and the Bucks are like, where's Hangman Page? And Kenny's like, don't worry, it'll be fine. So he doesn't actually come out with the rest of the Elite, and the match starts. They're basically, the opposing sides are on like the 10-yard line on either side of the field, and Aubrey starts the match with blowing a whistle, and they basically sprint at each other and collide at midfield in front of the ring that is set up in the middle of the field, and somebody gave Matt Jackson a crazy drop kick right out of the gate. They're just all fighting at midfield, and eventually Sammy is he's up, the camera is on him, and then we see Hangman Page is making his entrance on a horse, and he runs down Sammy just like they ran down Sammy in the golf cart. But Sammy manages to get down one of the tunnels before Hangman gets to him, and Hangman continues down the tunnel, and he goes searching off for Sammy. So those two are kind of written off for a little bit. The Bucks and Santana and Ortiz do some regular spots in the ring. They get all their stuff in. Kenny Omega comes in, gives Santana and Ortiz both Snapdragons. Jericho gives Hardy a code breaker, and Sammy finally returns to the match. He misses a shooting star press. We see a bunch of dives here. Everyone kind of pairs off and go their separate ways around the field. The Bucks are with Jericho and Sammy for a bit. They're fighting down at one end zone. Matt Jackson grabs a ladder and sets it up next to a goal post, and he climbs up onto the goal post and does a moonsault off of it onto Jericho and Sammy. Jericho gets pinned for a 2 count. And then we cut over to Omega and Santana. They're fighting up in the stands. Omega gets double teamed by Santana Ortiz. Hager and Hardy also make their way that direction too. And then we cut to Hangman Page is slowly riding his horse down the concourse looking for Sammy. He can't find him. He gets off of his horse and he tells his horse, stay. And then he sees the entrance to the bar, so he goes and walks down the aisle down into the bar. We go back to Santana Ortiz with Omega and Hardy. They're fighting up in the concession area. Omega sets up a barricade across 2 like bar tables, and Ortiz throws salt in Kenny's face and then dumps like an entire bottle of salt all over his head. Then they give Omega a double face buster onto that barricade that's between the 2 tables. And then they get up onto the tables and powerbomb him through it. Did anybody notice that if they didn't cut, Santana's table was going over and he probably ate it off camera?
Yep. Yep.
And then... let's see. Hardy comes back in to break up the pin with a mad ball. Hardy is thrown into the pool. That is, yes, they have a pool at this stadium. And Santana goes in, Well, Ortiz is scared to get into the pool because he can't swim, but it's only 3 feet deep. And Santana's like, "Get in here!" And he slowly goes down the ladder, like getting into the pool. And then they try to drown Matt Hardy, and then when they pull him up the first time, it's suddenly Team Extreme Matt Hardy. He does like the Team Extreme. I don't know what you want to call it, signs with his hands, and then they try to drown him again, and they pull him up, and it's Matt Hardy version 1.0, and they have the little factoid on the side. It says something along the lines of Matt Hardy can hold his breath for like 300 and some odd seconds. And then they push him under again, and this pool has plexiglass on the side, so the camera can shoot into the pool, and Hardy is just smiling, giving the Matt 1.0 hand sign, and just looking at the camera. They pull him up again, and it is broken Matt Hardy. And he says that Ortiz needs to pay for his transgressions against Vanguard, and they fight out of the pool. He puts him up onto a table. Santana charges Hardy, but gets backdropped onto Ortiz, and then Ortiz is pulled in. They have like this huge Liberty Bell type thing. I have no idea. Anyways, he basically puts Ortiz's head into this huge bell and rings it, and Ortiz is basically just shaking, and he gets duct taped into a chair. Hardy then fights with Santana and shoves him into an ice chest and uses a broomstick across the handles so he can't get out. And afterwards he says, "This will help with your inflammation." So that was pretty funny. Then we cut to Jake Hager. He is looking for Hangman Page. He finds the horse standing in the concourse. He's like, "Well, I think I have found Hangman." He walks down into the bar, and he finds Hangman sitting at the bar drinking, and he sits down next to Hangman. Page pours him a drink, says, "Are you here to drink or are you here to fight?" Doesn't matter. And then they start fighting. This is like the classic movie bar brawl. There is a pool table. Hangman gets thrown over the pool table and snags a pool cue that was on the ground, breaks it over Hager's back. Hangman then gets a Uranagi onto the pool table. Hager then grabs Hangman and brings him over to the bar and runs him down the bar, just like you've seen in all the classic westerns. Hager then powerbombs Hangman through a table for a 2 count, and this is where Kenny Omega comes in to help his friend. Omega and Hangman bash Hager over the head with 4 bottles of the bubbly, and that doesn't stop him. Hangman uses Omega as like the substitute of the ropes and does a flip to do the buckshot lariat on Hager and sends him over the bar, and he lands back behind the bar. Hangman jumps over the bar, grabs a couple of cups, and he grabs a bottle of whiskey and a jug of milk, and he pours a glass of milk for Kenny as Kenny pours a glass of whiskey for Hangman, and they clink glasses, and they head out of the bar. I thought that was hilarious. Then we have Sammy and Matt Jackson. They are fighting, and then Matt starts giving Sammy Northern Light suplexes the entire length of the field. But this is like interspersed. This is interspersed with Nick and Jericho. So it starts off Matt and Sammy. He gives them like 2 Northern Light suplexes. Then it cuts over to Nick and Jericho. Nick holds Jericho in front of like the power freeze breeze thingy that they have at football games to cool off the players. And then Nick gets thrown over the bench. Jericho hits Nick with one of the down markers. And then he yells, "This will move the chains." And Jericho has a bullhorn and says that Nick should have stayed home. Nick kicks it out of his hands and then smashes him with the bullhorn. I'm not sure where the cut is, but then we cut back to Matt Jackson. He is still giving Sammy Northern Light suplexes. They're at the 50-yard line. They cut back. Nick is pelting Jericho with footballs. I believe one of them got Jericho right in the nuts. Nick is then thrown into this giant jaguar head, and then the Jaguars mascot comes out. He taunts Jericho. Jericho drops him with the Judas effect. He grabs the traffic cone and does the cackle like the Wicked Witch of the West, just like he did during the street fight. Nick super kicks him into a practice net and holds up his arm and says, "It's good!" And if you look in the background, Aubrey Edwards also has her arms up. I had to giggle at that. Jericho hits Nick with the bat Floyd, and Nick actually kicks out of a pin attempt. Jericho says, "That was 3," and then pulls out the red challenge flag and challenges the play. So Aubrey's like, "You're challenging the play? Fine." To the review booth. They go to the replay booth, and Aubrey says, "The call on the field stands," and Jericho calls Aubrey a shitty referee. And then Matt finishes his Northern Light suplexes. He's made it all the way to the other end zone. He spikes Sammy's head into the end zone, and he starts celebrating. The ref throws a flag for excessive celebration, and Matt gives him a super kick. Wow. This match is just goofy as all hell at this point. We go back to Jericho and Nick. Jericho hits Nick with a bat and puts him up onto a table, but then Matt comes in for the save, and Jericho gets put on the table. Nick runs up the stadium stairs and then back down the stadium stairs to do a splash over the railing onto Jericho. Hangman strolls out, and I laugh so hard because I realized what was just about to happen. He strolls out, and he has the line marker, the little thing that they push to paint the lines on the field, and he pushes it right up and over Jericho's body, right up from his feet across his head. It was hilarious. And then we cut to Sammy. Sammy looks like he is crawling across a battlefield, and then he collapses. And then the sprinklers go off, and it like wakes him up, it jerks him into like reality. And the positioning was just right that when he got up on all fours, it is a sprinkler that sprays in 2 directions. It was sprinkling him right in the nuts and in the face. And he got up and he's looking around and he doesn't see anybody. He thinks he's the last man standing and he's won the match. He starts celebrating, and then we hear a rev of an engine, and he stops in his tracks and he says, "Oh no." And he turns around, and there is Matt Hardy and Kenny Omega in the golf cart once again, and he starts running, and they have like the same camera angle just like they did in the street fight where they're trying to run down Sammy, but with the addition, Bryce Remsburg is hauling ass next to the golf cart, trying to keep up with it, to keep pace with the action. It was hilarious. Sammy manages to jump into the stands, and Hardy and Omega chase him down. There's a platform conveniently set up into the stands, and they fight over there. Sammy is starting to choke Matt Hardy, and a new drone flies in. It is Neo 1, the natural electronic organism. But Omega ends up hitting Sammy with a V-trigger here, hits a one-winged angel off the platform, out of the stands, down onto basically a stage constructed over a crash pad. Aubrey has to go snag a ladder so she can climb up and look over the side because it was too tall. She counts the pin, and the Elite win. The Bucks give Omega a Gatorade bath, and they all pose at the end zone. Is Hangman back into the fold? That is the question. Dave, let's start with you on this one.
Please, sir, I'd like some more. MVP, easily Aubrey Edwards. I have a couple of notes here. Milk flavored whiskey, which is fantastic.
Yes, because when they clinked glasses, a lot of the milk from Kenny Omega's flew up and into Hangman's glass.
disgusting. It was just disgusting. Adam Page, an unbelievable seller via his facial expressions alone. Just watch especially with a submission, just like he sells pain like it's fantastic. And then Matt Hardy going in and out of that pool, going through his different phases. And I would love to see more of this. And what's just fantastic about AEW is that since they're doing a quarterly pay-per-view, you can do one of these per pay-per-view, and it is still fantastic. Like, you can do Jurassic Express versus like Best Friends in a Jungle, or Private
Right.
Party versus Lucha Brothers in like some whatever Long Island bar or something like that. And every time it's going to be fantastic because you can pre-produce it and then sell it mid-show, end-show, whatever. So yeah, Stadium Stampede, I think, in my personal preference, has set a precedence for future AEW segments.
I think the problem is going to be, though, once we have full crowds back, are they going to want to watch something on the screen for what essentially went 45 minutes starting at the intros?
Well, just toss it on the pre-show. For the first one, when the crowds are back, throw in the pre-show. If they dig it, they dig it. If they don't, then all right, screw it. We don't do it anymore.
Yeah, but these things can definitely...
dark.
Right. These things can definitely work, though, during the empty arena era, depending on how long it continues.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And God, I hope it ends soon.
Dustin, what was your take on this one?
Oh, my God. This might have been the dumbest, silliest, most over-the-top segment that I think I've ever seen, and I want more of it. It was probably the greatest thing I've ever seen. It took the street fight that was already at like a 10 in terms of goofiness and, just not taking itself too seriously. You knew what it was. Let's have fun with it. And it turned it up to 11, man. I would have loved to have been the Elite or in the Inner Circle, and being told we're having free reign wherever you want to go, scout the stadium, scout Daly's place, go. And then they're walking around thinking, hey, wouldn't it be funny if? Or how great would this be if? And it's 8 hours to film a wrestling match that aired for 45 minutes is that's insane. The Inner Circle wearing football jerseys, it wasn't as cool as they thought it looked. I thought it was super dorky. I think it was supposed to come off as super dorky, but they came out with those jerseys, and you could tell each one of them were like, yeah, we are badass. It added to that comedy factor, because no, it wasn't. They 300 style clash in the beginning. They all split up in different parts where I was curious. It was kind of like watching, you're watching this scene in a movie. You're watching this scene in a movie. Each character got their own time to shine in their own scene with their opponent. Everyone, Jericho, Guevara, the 100-yard Northern Light suplexes, the Matt Hardy version 1, which is arguably my favorite version of Matt Hardy, I know, the Matt Fax, fucking Santana Ortiz getting in the pool. He can't swim, climbs down the ladder. But that was just the comedy side of it. It had a lot of physicality to it. They were in the ring for maybe 5 minutes of that entire match.
How about that?
Yeah, and Sammy Guevara had to run from a horse and from a golf cart. So I wasn't sure, because we asked, what the hell is a Stadium Stampede? It's going to be kind of like a street fight. I can't wait to see what it is. I can confidently say with the street fight, I remember even saying, I don't think I've ever really, this is the most fun I've ever had in a street fight. Easily the best street fight match I've ever seen. This match is a whole category on itself on what you can accomplish if you really just believe. They could easily just do comedy. They believed in this. We can make this great. And it was the same thing as the street fight. They knew what it was. They knew what it wasn't. It was put together. Like I said, I would have loved to have walked with these guys and seen the mind process of what they were going to do to put together this match. And then it still ends, because my prediction was going to be Adam Page kind of turns. We still don't know. This pay-per-view, and you could attest to my win-loss record on my guesses, same thing with you, Eric, on this pay-per-view. AEW has such a great ability to lead you in one direction and then throw you completely off. But the whole time, make you realize that something over here has been happening the entire time that I have no idea where it could lead. This was it. This was the main event. This sent everyone home. This was the final shot of Double or Nothing. It was a 45-minute match. This was... It was just great. It was fun. It was 11 o'clock at night. I was tired. I got a second win watching this. This match was... I'm not really setting it up. If anyone hasn't seen it and you're using this as a recap to watch this match, go back and spend 45 minutes watching this. It's just so good, and you get to see everyone's personality come out. Same thing I've always said with Jericho with last week. You get to see the comedy turn brutal within a second. The whole thing with the mascot, you see him like, oh, it's funny, and then he hits him with a Judas effect. It just has these elements that I don't think a lot of people could pull off. I think a lot of talent could, but when you have 10 personalities in a 45-minute match, you found a way to showcase each and every single one of them. I loved this match so much. If a Stadium Stampede becomes a staple in Double or Nothing, and we only get to see this match, or like how Elimination Chamber was back in the day, the next time I hear the word Stadium and Stampede in the same sentence, I'm going to think about this match, and I'm going to think about this match a lot moving forward. This was the entire recap of this pay-per-view, which was just... It entertained. It made you want more of what they were showcasing, especially the talent. I loved this match.
So, from what I understand, you love this match.
I loved this match, Eric.
I thought this match was great. There were segments that I was laughing so hard, I was bawling my eyes out with tears because it was just I was just laughing so much, especially from when the point from when Sammy was on the sprinkler to the end. I was laughing like crazy. Of course, they do the classic slide the guy down the bar that we've seen in a million westerns, that has happened a zillion times. And this, the zaniness of Hardy ringing a bell, just, it's so cartoon, because you see that in cartoons, you never see that in real life, where Ortiz is like inside the bell and he rings it, and Ortiz is then suddenly shaking the whole, and he can't control himself. And it was just utterly hilarious. And I thought the commentators, even though it was completely ridiculous, they still, like, they sounded like they were having a blast calling the match. A couple things that I didn't even touch on at the beginning. They had cheerleaders and like a small, like, little, I don't know, 10-piece marching band there as well at the on the side of the field. And again, in this match, they piped in crowd noise, whether they just continued recording, whether they got live reaction for the people who are in Daily Place as they were airing it, or they recorded it earlier. It was fine, because they actually had some chants piped in that sounded like they were from much fuller crowds. But again, they did a really good job with adding that atmosphere, adding that crowd noise, even though there was no crowd there, basically, in these parts where they're filming. There was absolutely zero people besides the production crew doing the Hangman and Hager and Omega section in the bar. There was no audience there, but they had audience noise the entire time, and I thought this was great. And while I do want to see another one of these happen, I'm hoping, this is probably going against the grain from both of you, that it doesn't happen for at least another 2 years, so it's special. Because I think you have to have a certain setup for this to work, and it doesn't come around once a quarter or once a year, and it's tough to even put together once every 2 years. So I'm hoping we don't see one of these again for a while, but I really want to see another one. All right, so all in all, I thought this pay-per-view was really good, and even in the zero crowd empty arena, whatever you want to call it, era that we're currently in, this is a home run, I thought. We'll go, Dave. What do you think?
No, I say hammer meets nail. It did have its flaws, but for the most part, yeah, this was an absolute home run, grand slam, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, more please. And for the fact that and the crowd really does play a big part. And it must be so unbelievably tough from a producer's point of view to not have people cheering. Because, I mean, that's what's getting the match going. But to be able to keep producing matches, to keep the show going without people literally cheering you on is got to be unbelievably difficult. So the fact that this is such a home run and such a thumbs up in my book, like, yeah, absolutely, hands down, keep doing what you're doing. They're, for what is going on, they're hanging out of the park.
All right, Dustin, let's talk about our predictions for a second here.
Do we really have to? I mean,
all right, so we both had best friends. We were correct on that one. We both had Shawn Spears. We were both incorrect on that one. I had Allin. You had Sky for the ladder match. We both lost out on that one. Britt Baker, Kris Statlander. We both picked Britt Baker if it was going to happen, but that didn't happen. So I guess we're okay. We're null on that one. You picked I picked Inner Circle. You picked the Elite. So you get that one, and then we both picked Lance Archer, Nyla Rose, and yeah. So we were both wrong on that one. Jon Moxley, hey, we were right on that one.
Hey, we're not completely stupid.
And you were right on MJF versus Jungle Boy, where I picked Jungle Boy. So it was a tough one. All right, so yeah, I don't have anything else to say. Do you guys have any parting words, Dustin?
No, just to piggyback with Dave, and it's a point to be proven when I'm doing PWA stuff, whether it's cutting a promo in front of a crowd, he's absolutely right. You go for that crowd noise. You go for the yay or the boos. You're not getting any of that here. So for these guys to put on this caliber of a pay-per-view, knowing that they're not going to get anything from the crowd, they're doing it for the sole purpose of entertaining. And this is a perfect example of what you can really accomplish when you believe in something and you just put all your chips on it. No pun intended, from Double or Nothing. But it was a great pay-per-view. I really thought it was really, really solid. I thought it also built some rivalries moving forward. I think it's only up from here. I think this set the standard for AEW pay-per-views in 2020. This was a great show, and for everyone to be able to pull this off in an arena that sits, just the stadium alone, 80,000 people, and then to have less than 100 there, and to pull this off is really great. So kudos to AEW for believing in this and making it happen.
All right, Dave, final words, and why don't you throw out your plugs to people can find you.
Yeah, I do have to agree with Dustin. Props to AEW. Push Sammy Guevara, push Hikaru Shida, and for heat purposes, Dustin West, you can shut your ass. But you can also find me on Russo's podcast about anything. You can find that on any podcast directory, which is Dave Colarusso, or you can find me on Instagram, Mighty Mouse 0913. That's all I got.
All right, and Dustin, your plugs.
Instagram, DC_West_. Also, you can find me on Facebook.com/Pro Warrior Alliance if you want to support independent wrestling.
Awesome. And my name is Eric LaRoche. You can send me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. If you're interested in being a co-host for New Japan stuff, shoot me an email to the same place. If you're watching this over on YouTube, this is available as a podcast on all your favorite podcast apps. If you're listening to this as a podcast, we do this show live on YouTube. Of course, this is a post show, so it was done at a different time as normal, but we're at least on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern for the AEW Dynamite post show. And other than that, I think that's it. So thanks a lot for watching and listening, everybody. And we will see you next time on That's Wrestling. See you later, guys.